All right, guys, this is the first Monty and the Pharaoh watch along, obviously, with the two hosts of Monty the Pharaoh, Mr. Jimmy Farrell, along with Mike Monty. That would be me. And we're brought in Benny from one half of Dan and Benny in the ring. Benny, how are you, bud?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
No, we love having you on. And then again, from the after show, we've got Bruce in the house. Bruce, who came up with this idea, and we're
experimenting.
Hold on, guys. I'm taking the sound off. So yes, we got Bruce. And Bruce, what are you thinking, brother? How you doing, pal?
Hey, what's going on? What's going on, guys? Yeah, I had this idea of doing this. You know, Marty's a good friend of the show. We all have some good stories about him, and we all have some good and dark sides of him. So it was kind of a put together idea I threw off of you, Mike, and here we are.
And here we are. So we got about 15 minutes before we kick off Dark Side of the Ring, the season finale. First of all, what did you guys think about this season of Dark Side of the Ring compared to the other seasons?
It had its ups and downs. I'm not going to say it was exactly overall a dark side of the ring, but it definitely had some interesting episodes that brought some stuff to light. But it was season one was a lot darker.
Farrell, can you hear us? Benny, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
What did you think about this season of Dark Side of the Ring, Benny?
I honestly not the right person to ask. I haven't really watched much of it. I watched a lot of the first season, so I had to kind of pass on that question.
How come you don't watch it? Is you just not into the Dark Side of the Ring stuff?
No, it's one of those things that I probably should, and I'll get around to it. I just haven't. I mean, the shows that I have watched, I haven't watched a bad one. I just really haven't. I haven't caught up on it.
How about you, Farrell? What did you think about Dark Side of the Ring?
I don't have a TV, but you know that already. Sorry. Yeah. Well, by the way, you guys all sound like you're underwater over here because I've got a phone from 1842, and this is going to be very interesting for me. Mike, I know you love the documentaries, obviously. I've seen a few of the Dark Side of the Ring stuff, but I think we've covered it on the show that it has its angle. I'm not always into all of that stuff, but there's been some good shows on it. It is what it is. Again, I don't have a TV. Sorry, folks. Love you anyway.
So, obviously, the finale's on Marty Jannetty, who everybody who's in the chat right now or watched the show loves Marty. Benny, if I could start with you, what are your biggest memories of Marty Jannetty? And again, I think we spoke about this earlier. This isn't really a Dark Side of the Ring, right? Marty's Marty. I don't know what's so dark about this, but we're going to find out how they're going to portray this. But what are your thoughts on Marty?
I remember the first time I saw him was in the AWA when they were the Midnight Rockers. And before that, I had read about him in Pro Wrestling Illustrated. I mean, the guy was an amazing talent. And wherever he went, the guy won. He won titles. And with Shawn Michaels in the AWA, they won the titles. They didn't win it in the WWF, but I mean, I honestly, in my opinion, he was the more talented of the two of them.
How about you,
him and Michaels?
My first exposure to them also was back in the AWA as the Midnight Rockers and watching them beat Playboy Buddy Rose and Buddy Rose and Doug Summers there for the titles, and then that was kind of my early days of wrestling fandom. Big fan of the Midnight Rockers and was excited when they came over to the WWF for that run.
I mean, the guy was a god in the Central States. He won so many titles, both tag team and individual in Central States and Kansas City, which was a very good territory.
You think Marty did himself a disservice the way he's behaved over the last 20-something years, or is it just wrestling?
I think Marty's just Marty. Marty lives his life the way getting to know him over the last few months, he just lives his life the way he wants to. And he's not worried about it. So I had sent a text to him asking him if he was worried about tonight, and I got a message this morning. He said, "Hey, not really." He's like, "Everything was pretty positive." He's like, "I'm just a rocker." So,
how does it feel having a relationship with Marty Jannetty since you've been doing this, Bruce? Is it surreal?
In some ways, yes. The 12-year-old me is, jumping for joy. And then there's the, 47-year-old me that gets a text at 2:00 in the morning that's an audio message that you never know what it's going to be.
How about you, Jimmy? Jimmy, can you hear us?
You guys are going to laugh. I actually have tried walking outside, and I'm sitting in my car so I can hear you clearly, and some jackass has got his brights right in the Pharaoh's face. Anyway, so where were we? Fill me in. Who am I talking about? Oh, yeah, that's right, Marty.
We're talking about Marty. So part of the discussion was, did Marty do a disservice to himself with the way he's behaved in the last 20 years? And then you have a personal relationship, Pharaoh, with Marty. Thoughts on your relationship with Marty, Pharaoh?
Well, I mean, not to bore everybody with the history, but when we started, Marty was our first guest, and let's just say it didn't go smooth. Agreed, Mike?
Agreed.
Okay. So pretty much Marty started off as a mess with us, and, eventually we all ironed everything out. I think Marty is a really good guy. I actually really like him quite a bit when I got to know him more as a person. Do I think he's done himself a disservice? I don't think he's helped himself, but, it's nothing I wouldn't say to him anyway. He hasn't helped himself over the years. He's, Marty's a rock star who's a rock star. I mean, let's just cut to the chase, There's nothing wrong with that if you taper it a little bit, but Marty's fastball is a little too fast. He might want to work on the curveball and the slider, but I do think that it's hurt him. I mean, he could have been, an NXT trainer probably with Sean. I'm sure that the WWE is a very respectable, well-oiled business. It's a machine. And if you do some of the things that Marty's done, and we've seen it with other superstars in the past, they're going to put distance between themselves and you. So yes, I do unfortunately think that, to me, a guy who should be in the Hall of Fame has he's done himself a disservice.
So
Benny,
hey Pharaoh, you touched on something that I think a lot of the newer Monty and the Pharaoh fans aren't aware of, and I'm only aware of it from going back in videos and watching it. But can you elaborate a little bit more on those first couple of interviews with Marty?
Well, like I said, Marty was our first, what Mike and I considered, real guest. Obviously WWF fame and part of the Rockers, and we were very excited. And and I hate going over it again because again, we're Marty, myself, Mike, we're all good with each other now. But Marty definitely was messed up when he came the first time, really badly. The show paid him for a service, and we felt that we got kind of shafted, actually pretty shafted pretty badly. Obviously, we kind of let him know on our show. I guess these are the early days when we were establishing the fact that, we're not just your regular Joe Schmoes. Oh, well, of course we are, but we're going to say what the hell we feel. And just because you're a wrestler doesn't mean that we're going to hold back on you. So we kind of ripped him apart for quite a while. Eventually he came back, popped my partner in the face, as you've probably seen on the intros, especially to the cable shows out here on Long Island, where we got 150,000 people every week watching it. Thank you to our audience for that, big time. But, now you can't see me. You know why I can't see me? Because the guy's headlights are no longer in my face. So anyway, yeah. So basically, you know, we made good with Marty over time, but it was a real go of it in the beginning, including a fist fight. And
well, Jimmy, speaking of the fist fight, Jacob Deal out there saying that it was a work. You want to clear the air on that, please?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. I understand that why by reflex most people would think that anything involving wrestling is a work. Do me a favor, if you think it's a work, go back and take a look at my reaction. And you tell me with a straight face, am I acting? Do I look like I'm acting? Really? Really? Benny, I was one step from the loony bin.
Benny, I'm going to throw this one to you. Marty Jannetty, right? Before your last comment, you said you felt he was the better of the Rockers. Where do you think it went wrong for Marty Jannetty? And does that type of behavior, because you're definitely a wrestling historian, does that type of behavior sour you on the wrestler?
You know, coming from New York, I grew up on Farmingdale, Long Island, and I moved out of Long Island, away from Long Island in 1986. And I lived in Maryland, I lived in Missouri, and all I ever heard was, people from New York are assholes. And I said, no, they're really not. They might appear to be, but once you get to know somebody from New York, now there's assholes everywhere, right? But I think, when you take the time to know somebody like Marty, I think once you get past like all the bullshit with Marty, I think there's a really decent person inside. And I agree with Jimmy. The guy has not done himself any favors as far as his career goes, but he is who he is. That's really all there is to it.
Bruce, I'm going to throw this one to you. When you started watching Shoot interviews, I'm pretty sure you told me what attracted to you was the great Boston Pro Wrestling channel, hosted by the late Dan Marati. But one of his main characters on there was Marty Jannetty. Can you share a story about that?
Yeah, well, that's kind of how I got to find Monty and the Pharaoh, was through Dan Marati and watching, the Party with Marty's. And, unfortunately, it was a train wreck watching him, watching it was his condition that Dan was taking those videos in wasn't always the best. And, it kind of led me to you guys, because that was about the time he started having the issues with Tony also. And I found you guys, and, you guys were straight up shooters, and versus, hate to say it, Dan Marati was a little bit, rest in peace, but he didn't necessarily treat the guys the way they should be treated. So that's kind of how I became part of you guys.
Everybody out there, we've got 2 minutes until the show starts. I guess this is how it's going to work. I'm going to tell you what's going on the screen on some major points. In the meantime, you guys keep the conversation going. And then I'm going to ask you each to weigh in on certain things that might be happening. I'm only going to guess, but I'm assuming they're going to discuss the fact that Marty Jannetty claimed that he killed somebody in a bowling alley with a brick. I believe you're probably going to find or hear that he wanted to have sex with his daughter or half-daughter, stepdaughter. I don't know if I had that right. And then clearly some other stuff. So again, I don't know how this plays out. I just know that they saved this show for everybody for last because it's supposed to be the hottest. Loose in the house, good to see you. But I guess that's the way we're going to try to play it. Guys, this is our first time, so don't be cruel. We're gonna see how this works out. All right. Before we start the show, you guys want to weigh in? Pharaoh, Marty Jannetty, one more time.
Well, buckle down. You're about to get probably one of the most controversial figures in the last 30 years in pro wrestling. Enjoy the ride. Mike will be taking us along.
All right, so they're opening up the show basically with Marty Jannetty and the Rockers, right, in the WWF days. And, they're just introducing them. How great were the Rockers?
They were, in my eyes, they were one of those first high-flying teams out there. I know there were other ones out there, but they really, they caught the eye of everybody. They had that national audience being on ESPN. At least for me, that's how I got exposed to them. So they were awesome.
I think
I don't think the
Rock and Roll Express one notch higher. They were that good.
Well, to me, what the Rockers really were, if you really think about it, like, let's just pretend for a second that Shawn Michaels doesn't go on to do what he does and they stay together. I feel like the Rockers were the Hardy Boys before the Hardy Boys, and now you have the Young Bucks as the next Hardy Boys. The Rockers really could have been a first ballot Hall of Fame tag team if things had turned out a little differently.
Absolutely.
Worked out for Shawn, though.
That's a good point. They were the first Hardy Boys.
Yeah, they really were. They could have filled any arena from New York to California. Those guys were red hot.
Well, right now they're talking about the first time that he made someone disappear. So they're starting off the show for everybody pretty hot, right? They're just going right at it, the world according to Marty Jannetty, and they're actually going to Marty's house, which, by the way, looks like an apartment. So this is kind of exciting for me, right? Because we all, at least three of us, we talk to Marty pretty regularly, and I know Phil does and Maria does, and it's like, you wonder where Marty lives, so it looks like an apartment. Now they're just going back to the WWE days. By the way, not to get off the subject here, but what did you guys think of SummerSlam? Bruce, if you want to start.
I think the matches, there were some good matches. I'm not sure about the booking, though. I'm still waiting to find out what LA Knight won for winning that Battle Royal.
Let me talk to you. Did you catch it, Benny? Did you even see SummerSlam? I know you're not too big on.
Yeah, I actually did, and I mean, to me, the highlight was LA Knight winning the Battle Royal. Although, like, it did. What did he really win? But as far as the main event, Roman Reigns and Jey Uso, I told one of my friends I had a better chance of waking up next to Tom Brady's ex-wife than Jey had of winning the title against Roman Reigns. You knew what the outcome was.
You didn't wait a minute. You didn't wake up to Tom Brady's next ex-wife. You didn't wake up next to her. No, unfortunately, no. With your hair? What do you mean?
I know, right? Go
anyway. I'm confused. I actually thought that I agree with what Bruce said. I think that the matches, for the most part, outside of Baszler Rousey, which was an absolute stinkfest, but most of the matches were pretty good. I would have given most of them a B to an. I guess I top out with an A for Ricochet and Logan Paul. But I agree with Bruce. The decisions on some of these things were definitely head-scratching. But overall, still an enjoyable pay-per-view. I didn't think it was bad by any means.
No, guys, I don't want to interrupt what you guys are talking about, but so here's a question, right? So we all know that Marty Jannetty, right, could have been one of the all-time greats. Do you think, again, why do you think he acts like everything's a joke all the time? Is that a defense mechanism? Because even in the beginning of the show, he's playing the old Marty shtick, right? In the house, doing that stuff. What do you think, Benny?
I think that you absolutely nailed it. I mean, underneath the bravado and the joking around there's a tortured soul in there saying, I fucked up.
I agree. I think that, and can you really blame Marty? I think Marty clings to the good memories when the rock star lifestyle was working for him, back when he was a young man, back when he was making good money, back when he was getting television exposure, back when he was real famous, especially in the wrestling circles, of course. But I can't say I blame him. I do think that he has been stuck in it. But again, you see it. You see it with others. Marty's not by himself in this at all. I just feel like, why would he want to think about the now sometimes? I mean, that was his prime. And I'll tell you what, if that was my prime, I'd probably want to cling to it too, to be very honest.
I mean, I got to be honest here. If you're watching this documentary, right, they're just cruising around with Marty Jannetty right now, and they're kind of bringing him back to they're showing his old girlfriend, who, by the way, was pretty decent looking when she was younger. Phil says, I think MJ's
when she was younger.
Agree. Oh, Cher Bear in the house. What? Hello, Cher Bear from Maria Davis. I don't see Cher Bear. Is she here? Okay. So,
hey, Mike, what was that explosion about that they and the window?
You're funny, out? Mike.
No, I'm serious. Maria Davis says hello, Cher Bear. I don't see it. What explosion?
Oh, it just I'm a few minutes behind on my streaming here, and it just they were around a table, they were playing with some chemicals, and there was an explosion, and the window blew out.
Okay, yeah, so there was. By the way, there is Cher Bear is in the house. Hello, Cher Bear. Happy Tuesday. Thank you. She says Monty the Pharaoh.
Hey yo. Hey yo.
It looked like they were doing a chemistry thing, but I guess my point is they're driving around with Marty Jannetty right now, and he's like showing them the bowling alley or whatever else. And we just spoke about how maybe this is a defense mechanism. Phil even says, right, MJ's waters run deeper than many think. Even Dark Side of the Ring is kind of disrespecting him. What do you think of that, Bruce?
Well, would you expect anything less from Dark Side of the Ring? They are always they're always looking at the worst in somebody. I mean, the way they treated Randy Savage in his episode, and Jim Hellwig in that episode. So you kind of expect them to find the worst of the worst and really and push those buttons. When you were watching the previews, it seemed like they were really going to focus on that the missing body and the murder with the brick behind the bowling alley. And from what I was reading in the previews, they actually go to the bowling alley.
And some content.
Marty is a very colorful cat. So you cannot be surprised that Marty's almost like a cartoon, and I almost mean that as a compliment. Marty's like a cartoon character. So I'm not surprised that they're showing all these wackadoo sides to Marty. Marty makes it easy for them.
Yeah, that's a good point. He does make it easy for him, but here lies a problem, and I'm not sure if you guys had spoken to Marty, whoever speaks to Marty. Marty recently, I guess, Shawn Michaels was questioned, would he bring Marty Jannetty in to help train at NXT, right? So I was talking to Marty one day, and I'm like, hey, it's good news. Shawn said he's definitely willing to bring you in, and Marty told me straight up, he's like, I don't think I want to quit drinking to go train at NXT. And to me, that was disappointing in itself. Benny, you want to weigh in on that comment?
Well, I wanted to say that I think that Marty would benefit from the services of Chubby Tortello, and I wanted to get Jimmy's thoughts on that.
I don't know though, Mike. Doesn't Chubby lose all his cases though? I mean, does he really need Chubby?
Listen, we got a bigger problem. We got a bigger problem here, and I don't want to be an ass about this, but I got to tell you, the close-ups at Dark Side of the Ring, they got to back the camera up because some of these old women that are on there and wrestlers, it's a rough look right now. I'd rather stare at the screen right now. It's you're seeing moles, you're seeing and then they show younger pictures when they were in their 20s, and you're like, boy, oh boy, it's hard getting old, man.
Hey, Mike,
you guys, go ahead.
Mike, we got to be careful, man. I don't want to start breaking out pictures of you and me back in high school because I got a feeling we look a little reptilian ourselves.
Yeah, but look at the difference. Our camera views, you can barely even see my face. See this? You can't see anything. I'm making sure I'm not shoving my face into a camera. I mean, I don't need a producer of this stuff. Is back the camera out, buddy. Use some makeup on these people. Help out. Jacob Deal says, in the words of Kurt Angle, oh, it's true. It's damn true. I got Phil says, I wanted Dark Side of the Ring I want a Dark Side of the Ring of the Dark Side of the Ring, a focus on all the writers and producers and their skeletons who are likely scarier than the stars they exploit. What do you think of that comment? That's, Phil's always coming up with good comments. I'm sure. So now they're showing old videos of Shawn Michaels talking about Marty Jannetty. Keep it going, guys.
You guys really think Shawn would be kind enough to even offer a job? I mean, I know that's what Marty has told us, but wouldn't Shawn be kind of crazy to do that? Do you think that there's validity to that?
I don't think Shawn would.
Well, the deal was he said to Marty, I guess, if you want a job here, you have to quit drinking, and Marty,
okay,
there's no way Marty's going to stop drinking. So unfortunately,
well, I tell you what, that right there really says it all. I mean, for those who are trying to get through to Marty to get better, it's very clear that Marty's not interested in that. At least, I mean, I hate to jump to conclusions, but if Shawn Michaels is offering you the keys to the NXT locker room and to be a teacher, and you'd rather drink, I mean, Mike, help me out here. What are you doing, Marty? I mean, I'll tell him this when I see him next time. Marty, what are you doing, bro? Because he clearly would be a great teacher. Agreed? What a great wrestler he was. There's so much he could share with the up-and-coming guys, and he would rather get drunk. Marty, the money would be good, bro. What are you doing?
The first lady says Shawn won't because the post and all the media and his lifestyle. So yeah,
right.
Marty's he's a loaded gun, and you don't know what's going to come from him. You know what I'm saying?
It's a shame. It's a shame.
Well, yeah, the way I look at it is Marty was running his own life, I guess. Right now, guys, they're talking about when the Rockers first made it to the WWE, and then Jimmy Jack Funk kind of got into it with Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, and Shawn broke a beer bottle over his head, and then it got reported back to, I believe, Monsoon, and Monsoon fires him the next day. I don't know if it's Monsoon. Guys, correct me out there, but whoever found out about it, let the Rockers go on the first round, and that's when they returned back to the AWA.
Okay, that's when the first time they were up. Yeah, okay.
The first time around.
Yeah, I've heard the stories about that, but I don't know too much about it. But I know that they went back down to the AWA, and then they were feuding with like Pat Tanaka, Paul Diamond, and they ended up getting their second championship down there. Then within a few months, they were back up in the WWE. I think it was the following January.
By the way, Phil says, watch out. MJ may sneak up and sit in your passenger seat while you're there. Oh, by the way, B40 says, I'm missing this because my wife is watching Jersey Shore reruns. My wife loves Jersey Shore, and Sammy is back. If anyone watches Jersey Shore, Sammy's back in the show. So it's actually probably better than Dark Side of the Ring. We should do a watch along for Jersey Shore.
Now, Mike, I got to ask, did Jersey Shore reboot or something? Because don't be shocked. I actually have seen every single one of the original runs episodes. What do you mean Sammy's back? Is this a
No, they rebooted it, and they had the show without Sammy and one of the other guys. I forget. I don't know the characters. But now Sammy's back. It's actually very, very funny. A mess says, Farrell, Marty has to want to help himself first before he can be helped. If
Bingo
he doesn't want help himself, there's nothing no one can do for him.
Absolutely.
Bingo. Nailed it. Perfect. Well done. Well said.
Maria
That's
Davis
pretty.
says, yes, Sammy will boost the ratings, and then
Sammy will boost my rating.
She actually looks very good, by the way, and she can handle a close up. The only thing worse than Jersey Shore is the Real Wives and Housewives. Here in Phoenix, Dark Side of the Ring won't be on for another hour. Jason, hang in there, man. Right now, they're not really, honestly, they're not giving much, right? It's still just the old stories. It's funny. They just look like they got a lot of filler in these shows, like stories that we all know. It seemed like on the earlier versions, they had more meat behind it, stuff that you might not have known about. All the stuff we hear now, is all the same garbage.
Well, Mike, think about it. With Marty, almost everything controversial is always right out in front because either Marty's talking about it himself or someone's covering it. So those previous episodes where you were getting what you would call nuggets, like, wow, I never knew that. Marty has been extremely public compared to a lot of the other subject matter on Dark Side.
So right now, Marty's saying that he's a gat, and that's God's amusement toy. And he's in a church preaching. He's in a church preaching right now, guys.
Preaching.
There's no one in the church, by the way. He's just sitting at the altar.
I'm relieved to hear that because I'm trying to figure out who would go to hear the word of God from Marty. But
not only that, you know, with respectfully, you'd have to have like some kind of, you know, I don't know, cue cards, but some kind of closed caption or something to make sure you understood what he was preaching about. Right?
Subtitles, yeah.
You're further in heaven.
So, right, you know, Benny, right now they're pushing a lot of Al Snow. I know you're into the older stuff, but did you watch back in the day when the New Rockers, Marty and Al Snow got together?
I vaguely remember that. It just, you know, it wasn't the same. There was nothing like Michaels and Jannetty. Not that they were a bad team, but you can never go back.
Was it the right move in your opinion, was it the right move for Marty and Sean to break up, or do you think there was more for them to do?
I think they had more left. You know, Marty's one of these people that he's just a very complicated guy. And I mean, he's never going to change. He's going to be Marty till the day he dies. I you know, whatever anybody tells him to do, he's going to do what he wants. And I mean, I think he's going to be one of these people that, I mean, I always use the two biggest what ifs in the history of wrestling were Gino Hernandez and Magnum TA, but Marty's not far behind, in my eyes, anyway, as far as what he could have been.
Is Marty? Well, I want to just read a couple of comments again. And Eli says, people knock pro wrestling for being fake, but they totally accept Jersey Shore and Housewives and condemn anyone who suggests that the shows are a work. That's true. Loose Cannon, the New Rockers were horrible. I'll say it. Totally agree. Maria Davis, Al Snow was a misfit if the new I guess you meant in the New Rockers. Eli, Marty Jannetty wrestling version of Keith Partridge. By the way, right now they got Pat Tanaka. They got Pat Tanaka on. We had Pat Tanaka on a show. Very cool guy.
Yes.
But again, a little strung out. I just got to say, looks a little strung out, in my opinion. I'm sorry.
What about me? Come on.
Jason says, Marty's a modern god of silly mischief, and I love him for it.
Yeah.
Jacob Deal, I think Vince butter Sean to convince him to split from Marty. That could be true. I
got to admit, I still wonder to this day what we all know what a screw up Marty was, but I do wonder before Sean became Sean, what level of screw up was he? And did Vince just see something in him? And would Marty's life have been the way Sean's has been all these years? Although Sean obviously sobered up and stuff, but I do wonder about how much of a screw up Sean was back in the day before Vince made him the next wrestling god.
So I think I'm going to answer that one, and you guys weigh in if you agree. I think Sean knew how to play the game, right? Sean knew how to be serious when he needed to be serious, and Marty did not. Marty did not know when to tone it down. And Sean, look, I always thought Sean knew what he wanted and what he had to do to have that happen. Where Marty, look, we've met Marty. He's a great guy. He's a trusting guy, a caring guy. He tells me stuff all the time that I don't repeat to people, right? And I think Marty just did not know how to play the game.
Yeah.
Thoughts on that, guys? You want to weigh in?
I completely agree. Sean was always a genius at playing the game. The locker room belonged to Sean because he knew how to play the game. And he knew how to respect The Undertaker, too, who was really the Derek Jeter of the locker room. Sean knew how to play his cards perfectly, and his career says so.
I do think, as much as I'm not a fan of Vince McMahon, though, I think you do have to give Vince McMahon credit for seeing what he saw in Shawn Michaels and having the foresight to split them apart because he saw the potential in Shawn.
You don't think he saw potential in Jannetty?
I mean, Marty had the potential. I think Vince, maybe he saw, that between the two of them, Shawn was more serious about making something of himself, and Marty was just more intent on being Marty.
So right now, interesting, right? They've got Chuck Austin. If anyone doesn't know, Marty Jannetty broke Chuck Austin's neck in the ring, right?
Yes.
And one of the big problems that continued to happen is they kept moving Chuck Austin, right? I think while they knew he was possibly had his neck broken. Thoughts on that? Marty's career, by the way, AAA says the real story of the Rocker split is that Shawn went to Vince first. They pitched a certain angle to Marty, but swerved Marty after the angle went hot. I totally believe that. And then let me ask you guys this, back to the Chuck Austin thing, but let's go back to Shawn and Marty. How do you think that affected Marty mentally? He had to be very close to Shawn, and realizing that he got swerved like that, how do you think that mentally affected Marty Jannetty?
I don't think that Marty's ever recovered. I think that he goes in and out of forgiveness when it comes to Shawn Michaels. I think he's permanently hurt. And you know what? I can see why. That's my take.
Bruce, what do you think?
Yeah, but I'm just I'm catching up on that part of the show right now where they're in the courtroom over that incident. Wow, I wasn't that familiar with it. Did this happen early in the run in WWF, or was this later on in their run?
On the Chuck Austin thing, it was on the second. Yeah. It was on the second turn.
Okay, but wow, I'm learning, reading about it as the section's going, because I didn't know that much. I had heard he had broken somebody's neck, but I didn't know the extent of the what was going on with it.
How about you, Benny?
I'm kind of with Jimmy. I really think that I don't think Marty ever recovered from that.
I mean, think about it this way.
Hey,
go ahead. What's that, Jimmy?
Mike, do you think that, you've watched the match again with Chuck Austin. Do you think that they were aware of how hurt he was, because they did keep pounding on him?
I was just watching the video on the show right now, and they showed a little bit of clip. It looks like Marty had no clue that this dude's neck was broken. Right? They don't go too deep into the match, right? But they show Marty like kind of pulling him a little bit. And I'm not saying that's the case. In fact, I don't think I've seen that match but once, and I really never gave it a lot of thought. But from the clip they show, and again, we know how Darkseid plays this game, it looks like Marty has no clue or could care less that the dude's neck is broken. Just from what I'm looking at, but certainly don't know for sure.
That show's playing the angles again, like they always do. I got you.
The First Lady says Marty had talent, but Shawn was the GOAT for Vince. Shawn was filling the seats up while Marty was partying too much. Thoughts on that comment?
It's hard to disagree with that, and sometimes I wonder, did you ever wonder why it's a strange comparison? You ever wonder why Tommy Lee is the good-looking one in Motley Crue? And, of course, he's the biggest one. Sometimes I just think looks also play into it. Listen, both guys could wrestle. Both guys look good. But there was something about Shawn's puss. Shawn just is a damn good-looking guy. He looks like a rock star. And I just think that Vince McMahon took a good look at Shawn and was like, this guy's a rock star. It's pretty obvious, It could have been something as simple as that, because they both – I'll tell you what, though, too. Shawn could talk better than Marty. I mean, it's almost a no-brainer when you really –
Shawn was easier to hate, I think. He was easier to dislike from the start.
That's a good point, Bruce. So, Benny, your thoughts. Could Marty Jannetty been a heel?
I have a question, and Jimmy might be able to answer this. Who was in the band, the group Wham? Who was the other guy?
Andy something.
That was Joe Blow from Idaho. Do you get my point?
It was the guy's name was Andrew Ridgely, and I mean it.
Was it? Wait a minute, you know the name? I am
Andrew
impressed,
Ridgely, yeah.
Benny. I'm impressed.
Thank you. So I think
Wow.
Marty Jannetty became the Andrew Ridgely. I mean, both of those guys were amazingly talented.
Ooh, that's
Paul and Oates. I mean,
that's rough.
Eventually one of them becomes the bigger star. And I think that's just what happened here. But I don't think it's because I do think, like Jimmy said, Marty and Sean had the look. Marty wasn't. I mean, not that Marty was a bad-looking guy, but Sean had that special look, and that's what put him over the top.
I'm going to disagree with you that, Benny. I just think Marty couldn't play a heel. Like Marty was a face all the way, and he was never going to be that heel.
I agree with that.
Sean, you could interchange. There was more runway with Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty.
That's great. That makes perfect sense. It was much more diversity. You could do more with Sean.
So he was Marty was like Tito Santana, but
good.
But Marty's like Tito Santana. You really couldn't turn him into that heel.
That's true.
I don't think he ever was a heel.
That's good. That's a good analogy. Benny, I think you're a little rough, though. I mean, the guy from Wham, I'll give Marty more than that. I mean, my God, you know his name, but I don't even know his name. Can we maybe call Marty the Abbott to Costello, maybe, or something?
How about the Oates to Hall?
Okay. That's better. That's better.
Benny,
that makes
Benny, Phil says a very good analogy, Benny, on a few levels, LOL. All right, they're talking right now. I think it looks like Marty ODs. This is the first time I'm hearing that. So something new from Dark Side of the Ring. Thoughts on Marty ODing?
That's something new to me. I can't say that I'm surprised, but I didn't think the stuff he was into, he really you could OD on easily. So, but it's Marty. He does like to party.
Marty was going to screw up really bad because some of the shit that he did was, crazy.
Pat Tanaka talking about some of the stuff that Marty Jannetty was crazy. If Pat Tanaka is saying that, that's a real problem.
What is with Pat Tanaka? He was well behaved when he was on this show. Did I miss something? Is he that kooky, Mike?
He certainly could hit the pipe, that's for sure. Little Patty says, but Andrew knew when to let George go to do his own thing. Look at that. Little Patty defending Andrew, Benny. You're in a little bit of trouble right now, pal.
Andrew Ridgely?
Yeah.
So somebody else knew who he was besides me?
I knew who he was. I just couldn't remember his last name. I knew it was Andrew. I just couldn't remember his last name. Maria, yes. It's like Marty ODs. They got a thing, and his girlfriend at the time, and now they look like they're resuscitating him. Again, hard for me to do both things, but it seems like that's the case. Hold on. And now they're punching him in the face.
I think that was a catalyst to their end of their partnership.
Oh, wait a minute. I think I got it wrong, dude. It might have been. Now it looks like Sean is getting messed up all the time. So Marty gets pissed off and he starts beating up Sean. And that they're claiming is leading to the breakup of the Rockers.
What?
Yeah, this is what they were. I saw this on the previews. They were claiming that they had a fight and ended up outside in the parking lot. Marty ended up beating the crap out of Sean. Sean missed a few days of work, and that was the catalyst to the breakup of the Rockers.
Vince just saw something more in Sean, and I think that probably Sean wasn't Vince's ear or ass more than Marty was. I hate to use this expression, but kiss of ass.
That's news to me.
Beefcake talking about Shawn Michaels
kissing
Vince. Beefcake talking about Shawn Michaels kissing Vince McMahon's ass while Marty. American Dream, welcome, buddy. What up? Good to see you.
What up? What up? Well, that's no revelation that Sean was good at kissing Vince McMahon's ass. He knew how to play him like a fiddle. That's half the reason why Marty wasn't, part of the future with
now
Vince.
Now they're into the point where the Rockers are having trouble in the ring. They're losing matches. And now we're going towards breakup, heading towards the whole barbershop angle. Where does the barbershop rank in angles or greatest storylines, even though it was a short storyline? Benny, thoughts?
It was one of the best, in my opinion. I mean, I saw that, and it was a holy shit moment. There weren't too many of them back then, but that was definitely a holy shit moment.
Farrah, what do you think?
Oh, I totally agree. That it's one of the all-time great moments. It is a holy shit moment. It was perfectly played, and we're still talking about it. How many years ago? I mean, what are we talking? 30 years?
Ago,
right? I mean, that is one of the all-time great spots in wrestling history. That was fantastic. I want more.
Yeah, I hate to say it,
Yep.
more people remember the angle than necessarily the people that are involved in it. When I mention it, people tend to always remember Shawn Michaels involved in it, and not necessarily that Marty was the other, the recipient of it.
Really? I'm actually surprised to hear that, because to me, it was who he was kicking in the face. It wasn't just the guy doing the kicking; it's who he was kicking in the face. So I'm surprised to hear that.
I have to agree, and it actually I can say up until this past weekend when I was we had my father's birthday party, and I was discussing the show and stuff, and right away my stepsister remembered the barbershop angle, but she remembered Shawn Michaels and couldn't remember Shawn Michaels. I think because he had that better career, he was more remembered for it.
In a way, it really broke my heart.
I think
Shawn Michaels is the big name.
Shawn Michaels was a politician, and Marty Jannetty was not a politician.
So it really kind of broke up.
The one thing I do notice, though, when Shawn was younger, Shawn had a very hard stone face, like hard jaw, looked very tough, looked like a real tough guy, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, but if you looked at his nose, you'd realize he hasn't had too many fights. I mean, look at my nose.
Triple A says Piper Snooker first, Shawn Marty barbershop second. Thoughts on that comment?
I don't think it's far off. There's a couple other angles I might put in there. Maybe the Hulk Hogan, Paul Orndorff, Adrian Adonis, flower shop angle. Maybe the Honky Tonk Man, Jake the Snake angle on the Snake Pit. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely ranks right up there with the tops.
It's like
Mike, what was it?
1 and 1A.
So Triple A says Snooker Piper first, Shawn Michaels barbershop second. Where do you give me your top 5, Benny? Top 5 angles.
Now I'm a little bit old school, so I'm going to say the first one for me was Zbyszko and Bruno, because that was a definite holy shit moment. But then you got the barbershop, you got Snooker Piper, definitely. You have trying to think what else here. You got Orndorff turning on Hogan when he pile drove him in the middle of the ring. That was a pretty holy shit moment. Trying to think what else, but those are mine.
How about you, Farrah?
Well, you know what? You guys have covered some of my 5, but there's 2 I'm thinking of that you guys haven't mentioned. Sergeant Slaughter's Cobra Clutch challenge with Pat Patterson, the other one that I think about all the time. I still think about it all the time, and I think it's a little understated to this day. I don't know if it's appreciated enough. Is when Andre the Giant turns bad and rips Hulk Hogan's crucifix off and cuts him in the chest, and Roddy Piper says to Hogan, "Brother, you're bleeding."
You're bleeding, man.
By the way, Jason says Hogan Andre heel turn. So yeah, you're hitting it on the head. I love that.
I'm here for one reason: to challenge you for a match at WrestleMania, and that heavy French act. That was an iconic moment.
That was unbelievable. I just got goosebumps. Well done, Benny. That was yeah.
By the
That's
way,
what
guys,
wrestling's all about, right there.
But in today's world, remember the contract signing where Hogan just overplays it and how we just loved it. If that happened nowadays, the dirt sheets, the fans would be killing that when he says to Hogan, "Just sign."
Oh, you mean when he went? You this is overplaying it? Yes! It was great.
You know what I
That was
loved about
great.
that, though? They called Andre Mr. Rusimov, but then they called Mr. Hogan. Like they kayfabed his name, but not Andre's.
Right.
But you had to give Andre a last name, Benny. What are you supposed to do there?
Right.
You can't call him Mr. Andre.
It could have been McGillicuddy.
What about Mr. Giant?
Yeah,
what's wrong with Mr. Giant? Never mind.
So do you think
though it's his middle name?
Those cartoonish type vignettes, like the Piper's Pit, the Snake Pit, the barber shop, the flower shop, those vignettes that were filmed off to the side. Do you think something like that could get over today, or do you think that day and age is gone and we're going to just have these interviews in the center of the ring, random, like the Grayson Waller effect and the ones that take place in the ring? Do you think something like those kind of campy ones to the side could get over nowadays? Those cool interview segments.
Marty lives for the moment. He just makes really
bad decisions. I think all you really see nowadays is their shows, whether it's Grayson Waller or it's The Miz or whoever it is, but it all takes place in the ring. Mike, whatever happened to a set for a show like the Flower Shop had? Where's the set to make it feel special? To make it feel like you're watching a little side show as part of the main show. Where is that?
I think those days are over, man. I think, you don't see that anymore. They throw a chair in a ring and a carpet and
they might want to bring them back.
I don't know, man.
The great moment was Frankie Williams on Piper's Pit.
I tried really hard. I tried.
Columbus, Ohio.
Right now, they're discussing that Shawn now starts to distance themselves from Marty because Shawn's making his move. Now again, I'm going to reiterate: I'm not so sure what dark side of the ring has to do with the Rockers breaking up. I know it's part of the story, but they're going pretty heavy on this. This is like 10 minutes of it already. You know what I mean? I'm not sure like what's so dark about that. It's a wrestling angle. And a guy politicked himself to the top of the ladder, right? Okay, congratulations. I'm again, this show is losing gas. Not just particular show, the whole series. There's not enough. You've gone through all the real dark sides of stuff. I mean, I don't know where you're going with this.
Mike, do you think that it might be disappointing you a little bit because expectations were so high, considering Marty is the king of controversy?
Honestly, I didn't expect much out of this episode. I mean, I know we're doing a watch along, but I think this is purely off of all of our relationships with Marty Jannetty, and how many people love Marty Jannetty, right? But it's like there's not anything here. I mean, they've gotten every bit of juice out of Dark Side of the Ring as they can. This to me, this is over. Now, with all due respect, I thought the Bam Bam Bigelow documentary, The Dark Side of the Ring, was very good, but again, it wasn't dark, right? It's a guy who got hooked on drugs, and that's it. It is. So I don't know if you call it Dark Side of the Ring. Why don't you just call it a documentary on Bam Bam Bigelow? Why don't you do a documentary on Marty Jannetty? My biggest worry here, and again, it's hard to go back and forth, is my fear is that they were just going to do a hit piece on Marty, and right now it doesn't seem like a hit piece. It just seems, Marty Jannetty. You know what I'm saying? Bruce, what are your thoughts?
I have to agree. As of right now, just from watching what I can and reading the captions, it's really just been a documentary of the life of Marty Jannetty and the breakup of the Rockers. And I have to say, I have to agree with you on the Dark Side of the Ring on the episodes this season. Last week's Bash of the Beach 97 episode was absolutely horrible. I really didn't enjoy it. It was nothing we haven't all heard before. There was nothing new that was brought out of it. And honestly, what was dark on it? You just had differing opinions and differing ideas on what happened.
I mean, the story itself is a good story. I've always found it very interesting, and it wasn't a bad episode, but it's not a dark side of the ring. You know what I mean?
It was a story. It was just telling two different sides of the situation.
Benny, what are your thoughts?
I'll tell you, and this is completely, from the heart. As a fan of Monty and the Pharaoh, I'd rather hear you guys talk to Marty. That's a lot more entertaining, and I'm going to get a lot more out of that than watching something like The Dark Side of the Ring.
I got to tell you guys, the one thing I'm getting out of this, and I want you all to weigh in on this. I think I mentioned it before, but I think we got to go a little deeper. Sean, best friends with Marty. They build this career together. You think it's going to go somewhere, and it's going somewhere. You're in the epic WWF, and then your partner just F's you over. I mean, what kind of damage would that do to you, Benny, if that happened to you?
I mean, like I said, I got a dog
it's
problem
okay.
here, but
it's a watch along. He's watching along.
After chatting with the guy the last time he was on your show, I kind of have a whole different perspective on Marty. I just think he's a troubled guy. I think he probably thinks, every day, like what I could have been, and I'm sure he thinks I fucked up. But at the same time, I don't think he has much of an interest in being anything other than what he is.
What about you, Farrah? Oh, we lost him. Bruce, what about you?
I just think Marty's Marty, especially getting to know him. It's kind of funny. You never know what to expect from him. He just lives his life the way he lives it. The posts he puts out on Facebook are absolutely hilarious. He's just living his life, and he's still partying like he's 35, 40 years old.
You don't know what's shoot and what's work.
Well, here's something I forgot. Did you know they reunited for an episode of Raw? They just showed that. I do not remember that at all. I don't remember that at all.
No, what year was that? Actually, it's just
going
on now.
I'd have to watch it over and find out. Farrell, before you dropped out, the question was when your best friend, or you perceive your best friend, and you're doing his career together, and you finally make it to the pinnacle, and then he backstabs you so he can take his own career. How do you think that affected Marty? And better yet, how would that affect you if that was you that happened to?
Well, it would probably, I don't know if I would have handled it exactly the same way Marty did. I'm surprised. Look, I would have had the gamut of emotions. Part of me would have wanted to just break his face. But the other part of me would have been like, well, you can't do that. So I guess I'm just going to have to hurt over it the rest of my life. I understand how Marty feels. I get it. I get it. That had to be the worst possible feeling you could really have, especially if you love your friend the way you do. That's got to be irreversibly. I don't even know if he's healed at all. I don't know. Maybe he has his days where he is. Maybe he has his days where he doesn't think about it. But I bet you still, to this day, Marty thinks about the what ifs. I bet you he still gets mad. And I wouldn't blame him, because they came up together. They came up with the humblest of beginnings. And you do that. That's what you do. I'd have a problem with it. I'm surprised Marty hasn't hurt himself, irreversibly from depression from it. I'm also surprised he hasn't hurt Sean irreversibly. Tell you the truth, I can't answer that any more honestly than I can, man. That would have really, really burned me, and it would have stayed with me to this day.
By the way, you dropped off, but I said they showed a clip of Marty Jannetty and Shawn Michaels reunited. A mess says, I remember that. It was one night only. Just can't remember who they wrestled. What year did Ludwig Borger wrestle? I think it was before Survivor Series. Again, I don't remember it. But, here's another thing that we have to think about. Marty was a much bigger name when he joined up with Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels would probably not be where he is or was if it wasn't for Marty Jannetty. So where's the loyalty there to begin with?
I'm not. I know I've read that they Marty had runs in the South beforehand, but I'm not sure what he had done before they teamed up in the AWA.
Well, I would tell you this. I know for a fact Marty Jannetty wrestled Ric Flair for the NWA heavyweight
Marty
title.
was heavy duty in the Central States, Kansas City region.
So he had multiple shots at Flair back in the Central region, right?
Yeah, as the Central States champion.
Mike, I don't know if I don't know. I don't know if you guys feel this way, but I remember it being this way. When I first saw the Rockers, I felt like Marty was ahead of the curve more than Sean in the beginning. Mike, am I wrong about that?
Yes. No, not at all. No, in the AWA, I think Marty was the stronger player. And prior to the Rockers, Marty was definitely way more over than Sean was.
Trouble with the law once again prevents him from capitalizing on the opportunity.
So Farrell, a couple weeks ago.
So that has to factor in too.
Hey, Farrell, a few weeks ago, you guys were talking on the main show about the top wrestling tag teams ever, and you came out with the Road Warriors. If the Rockers hadn't have broken up when they did, where do you think they would have ended up ranking?
I just saw him and that stripper girl a week before, and I warned him about her, and then a week later, they got...
Farrell, you there? Can you hear us? Well, Benny, take that question over. What do you think? Think Benny froze too? Is it just me and you, Bruce?
I guess so. Oh,
no, Benny's
moving. He's moving.
All right, Benny, what do you think?
I got barking dogs here. I got to time out for a minute.
All right, Farrell's moving again. Bruce, repeat that question to Farrell, see if he hears you.
I said, Farrell, a few weeks ago, you guys were discussing on the main show about the top tag teams ever, and obviously you guys came out with the Road Warriors, which I have to agree with. If the Rockers hadn't have broken up when they did, where do you think they would have ended up ranking? Somewhere like around the Rock and Roll Express, or somewhere a little bit lower, maybe British Bulldog level. What do you think?
We had some Pharaoh difficulties. I'll answer that question, Bruce. I don't know where they would rank. I don't think they would rank that high, honestly. I remember them in AWA as the Midnight Rockers, and obviously I was a Playboy Buddy Rose fan, and like you mentioned, him wrestling Doug Summers. Buddy Rose, that was the big feud for them back then. The Rockers to me were that team that just did the job, right? I remember seeing them at WrestleMania 5. I forget who they wrestled. I can't think it off the top of my head. It might have been Akeem and Big Boss Man, honestly. I don't see them ranking any higher. I mean, what do you think?
I just would have liked to have seen where their career went to. I was I was in that era. I got to see the Rock and Roll Express, and that was like the AWA version, and I could only see the Rock and Roll Express over the summers when I went to visit my family down south, and the Rockers I got to see year round, so they were kind of my version of the Rock and Roll Express, and so I really enjoyed watching them. So I would, in my eyes, I would have thought they would be higher, but in the reality, their tag team was only short-lived. It was only 4 or 5 years, so maybe 6 years.
So a couple of things to weigh in on, guys. Now they're really going into all his crazy posts on Facebook, like you had spoken about earlier, Bruce. He was offered $150,000 to do 3 porns. He wanted to have sex with his daughter. Now he's claiming someone hacked his Facebook page and said that. So, again, I think Marty does everything just for effect. Farrell, can you hear us now? Jimmy? No? Bruce, thoughts on the Rockers, where they would have been if they would have stuck together?
Long range, I mean, I would have hoped they would have been more of a multiple time WWF champion, and then, maybe just closed out their career a little bit stronger.
How about you, Benny? Where would they have been?
I think that if they had really, I mean, if Marty had his head on straight, that they would have been a top 10 tag team. I mean, and that's assuming they didn't break them up, though. They'd be Rock and Roll Express level.
So now at 10:50, everybody out there, they're discussing his post about murdering someone that actually got the police involved. When the police read that, they became involved in the situation. And let's see what Marty's got to say.
You were more concerned that a kid just tried to save himself, and then it ended up accidentally. There's called accidental deaths for a reason.
So now he's claiming that he can't believe the police went after him, considering that he was a child. And why wouldn't they be more worried about a child and it was an accidental death? I think Marty gets a little high on something and then just goes to social media and just makes mistakes. And this one just caused a little uproar than usual, right?
Well,
I think the guy just likes working people and seeing how much he can work them.
I think to a point, Marty also likes the attention. It's, and you really don't know what to expect from him. I mean, with me, he, for some reason, he tends to send me audio messages. I don't know what he does with everybody else, but I'll get a random him singing a song. Actually, here, let's see if I wonder if I can get this to play over the air here. Let's see.
So what, we get drunk. So what, we smoke weed. We just having fun, and we don't give a fuck who sees. So what, we go out. That's the way it's supposed to be. Living young and wild and free. Give it away, give it away, give it away now.
So, random stuff like that. I'll wake up in the morning, and that's a message I'll have.
It's obviously the man's got a good heart. I mean, I've always enjoyed. I know Phil has a relationship with him. Maria has a relationship with him. He's just a good guy. He's not a bad guy.
No,
Pharaoh, can you hear us now? Are you back on? Pharaoh?
Moving.
Guys, I think I heard Pharaoh, but I'm having a real hard time hearing anything right now. So my apologies to the folks at home.
You did hear. Can you hear me at all? No, you can't hear us. Okay.
I can hear you now, Mike. Go ahead.
So Bruce asked you a question before he got cut off. He said, if the Rockers had stayed together, since we did a show on Greatest Tag Teams, where would they have been on the list, or would they have been on the list?
Mike, do you remember where we put the Hardy Boys? Because I can't remember, but if they came before the Hardy Boys, I guess it would depend on the enormity of their resume. But they would probably have wound up in the top 10.
Wow. I'm a little surprised. I'm a little surprised you put them up there. That's kind of cool. Kind of cool.
No, I'm trying to remember where we had the Hardys. I mean, it all depends. If Shawn never has his solo career and they just stay the Rockers for 15 to 20 years,
right?
I can see it. I can see them being very highly ranked.
I think Benny, you mentioned the Rock and Roll Express, and Bruce mentioned the Rock and Roll Express. Do you think Ricky Morton did a disservice to himself by not leaving Robert Gibson in the back hall per se?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that was what he was meant to do. I mean, he did. I mean, for a while there, he did go solo and he wrestled Flair, but I don't think he could have done much of anything as a single. I think his niche was tag team, and I mean, and I'm saying Rock and Roll, Midnight Rockers top 10, assuming the same thing, assuming like Jimmy said they were together 15 years.
Bruce,
so well with the Rock and Roll Express, I had to say Ricky Morton. He's a lot smaller. He's actually smaller than Marty, I think. I don't think he would have gotten the opportunities in the WWF as a singles competitor, and he would have been stuck over in the NWA, WCW lines. As much as I would love to say he would have gotten over, I don't think he would have had a career anywhere near what Shawn Michaels was able to accomplish.
Here's the question of the day. You guys got to weigh in on. B40 says, Who's aged worse, Marty or HBK? The only female pops they get now is from a 65-year-old Denny's waitress working the early bird special shift. So, Bruce, who's aged worse, Marty or Sean?
I mean, neither. I'd have to say Sean really doesn't have that face for the camera anymore. From that pretty boy to maybe he got kicked upside the head one too many times. But I don't know. It's a good question. I would say Marty physically doesn't look like he's held up as well. You know, Sean's face is really fallen apart the last few years.
How about you there, Benny? Who's aged worse?
I'm gonna say that I think actually Marty has aged pretty well, all things considered. He doesn't look that bad. Sean's lost all his hair and his, kind of face looks a whole lot different.
This is all hypothetical. Remember that Columbus Police Department.
How about you, Farrow? Who's aged worse?
I love this question. I think it's hilarious. Excuse me. It's going to sound strange, but I think Marty is actually okay. Now, physically, if Sean takes off his shirt and gets in the ring, you know what? Sean's probably in better shape than Marty, but I think that Marty facially looks better than Sean. How's that sound?
Agree. 100%.
Yeah. Marty looks pretty good, all things considered.
From the neck up.
Isn't that interesting?
From the neck down, it's Sean.
By the way, the whole Columbus investigated the supposed murder and found no evidence. Here's one, and once you guys watch Dark Side of the Ring, you know where I'm getting at. Farrell, I'll give it to you first. Who's aged worse, Brutus Beefcake or Brutus Beefcake's wife?
What? I haven't seen Brutus Beefcake's wife. I can't answer that. Wait a minute. I don't know. You got to pick.
I got to tell you, dude, wait till you watch this. Just Google tomorrow.
Mike, how bad is it? I mean, what does she look like? A sneaker? I mean, what are you saying? She looks like a foot? What's the deal?
It's rough.
Close. A used knee pad, huh? All right.
Benny, who's aged worse, Brutus Beefcake or Brutus Beefcake's wife?
I haven't really seen Brutus Beefcake's wife, but Brutus has set the bar pretty low. So I would have to say, the wife is aged better without even seeing her.
I'm going to tell you, you're wrong. How about that?
Benny, by the way, are you okay? Because I see these. Benny, are you all right? I see these stalkers on YouTube. You've got some strange fans, my friend. Is it the hair?
You mean my pod rats?
Yeah, your pod rats. What is this? You're a rock star. You're a pod star.
I think it's you guys. You guys are, you're putting me over there.
By the way, Jason Morning says Brutus Beefcake looks like he ate Brutus Beefcake.
Who's got more
Brutus Queef Cake?
Look, the watch along has ended. We've learned nothing about Marty Jannetty. Nothing that we didn't know already.
Aren't you glad you tuned in?
For the final episode, this might have been the worst episode of Dark Side of the Ring, and I didn't even listen to it. I can tell you how bad it is. So if anyone did,
hey Mike, Dark Side of the Ring has jumped the shark. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. By the way, a mess found it. The Rockers reunion card, March 14, 2005, episode of Raw, team up against La Resistance. Wow. Wow. That was a long time.
It's almost 20 years ago. Yep.
All right, guys.
Yep.
Everybody say this was a fun watch along. I really enjoyed it. It was good first attempt. I really appreciate everything that you guys do. Benny, you want to promote anything out there, buddy?
Well, I mean, now we're with you guys. So every Wednesday night, we have a new episode about 10 o'clock. And I'm really glad to be part of the Monty and the Pharaoh team.
We're glad to have you, bro. How about you, Bruce? What do you got to promote, big man?
Oh, well, we've got a bunch of little stuff up and coming. We've got we're going to be doing a history of video games on the Monty and the Pharaoh Twitch channel. That's coming up really soon. We're doing the after show. We've got some other stuff in the works, and as always, we get to catch Monty and the Pharaoh every Thursday live on Twitch, Facebook, and the Intuitive app and YouTube at 9 p.m. So,
and how about you, Farrah?
Oh, I just want to say great job, Bruce, coming up with it. Mike, I always give you credit. You're always trying something new. This was personally torture for me because half the time I couldn't hear and I couldn't see. But hey, I was feeling my way through it. But I did have a good time with you guys, and it's nice to know we learned nothing on this Dark Side episode. I'm a little confused right now, but I still thank everybody for tuning in. What do you mean we learned nothing? I can't wait to watch this and learn nothing.
We've learned nothing. There is nothing that we learned. We learned that Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty. Here's a recap for anyone that missed the show because they were just listening to the watch along. I'm gonna give you a quick.
I'm telling you, way better off having Marty in studio.
We learned that Marty Jannetty broke up with Shawn Michaels. We learned that Marty Jannetty's old friend looks like a shoe. We realized that Brutus Beefcake's wife is in really bad shape, and we learned that Brutus Beefcake ate Brutus Beefcake. I mean, this is literally what we learned because there was. I got
to see Mrs. Beefcake.
Now wait a minute. Why do I feel dumber? We were supposed to be smarter after this episode. Hey.
I do want to, being this is about catch Marty Jannetty's new podcast. I'm looking forward to it. I want to see how well it does. I think it will do well. I'm rooting for Marty. We all love Marty, so we're hoping. But anyway, I want to thank you guys for joining us. And it's late night. We'll see you tomorrow on Monty and the Farrah at 7 o'clock on a special show. Which will we have there, Jimmy? What's that guy's name?
You better tell me at this point because you're breaking up so much. I think you're asking me who it is. Who is it?
Todd Gordon, man. Come on, brother.
Todd is God, of course. I would have missed that for the world, and I better not. I'm supposed to be there. That's going to be fantastic. I cannot
wait. By the way,
guys,
I want to stand corrected. Little Patty's right. We did learn something. We learned that Andy Ridgway was George Michael's partner.
You know what? You know something, Benny?
Andrew,
we should just rename Benny. I feel you made me smarter, Benny, tonight. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
All right, guys, have a great night. Thank you again for joining. God bless everybody.
Later,
guys.